Okay, does anybody have any questions before we start?
About that parent interview, are there any ways we could change some of the questions?
You can ask any additional questions.
Well, like, that's not about marriage.
It's not about marriage. Yeah, you can, I mean, whatever, you can adapt those questions if the marriage isn't, or if marriage isn't there, never was there, or whatever. Yeah, you got flexibility. Just try to keep the context of the question similar, and just kind of be creative with that. That's fine. Anything else? Yes, that's due tonight, the parent interview. So what I want you to write on is discussion question number 2 here. Have you ever had a money conflict with a sibling, friend, or roommate? How could it have been avoided? How did it get resolved? How did it end? How could it have been avoided? How did it end? Money conflict. Hannah, number between 3 and 9. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Doris, what did you come up with? Huh? None? Oh, come on, you got something. What are you saying? Well, like you loaned them some money and they never paid you back, or you covered somebody at dinner and they never, whatever they, anything doing with money, the brother, sister, friend, roommate, anybody. Okay. How much was it? $100? And you didn't trip about that? Okay. Do you still talk with them regularly? Did they, so you just treated it as a gift though. So it didn't really have that much conflict. They never pushed back on it, they never felt weird, or you didn't feel like, hey, everything. Okay. Well, it did a little bit, right? Stop talking. It makes things a little bit weird, right? So how could it have been not weird? If they paid money back, yeah. So if you're going to get that, so that would be more of, I don't know, writing it up maybe or something, or having it defined. I mean, do we sometimes like do little deals like that and not really talk about when's it going to be paid back, how's it going to be paid back, right? Or just, hey, dude, can you slap me 100? What's that? You're right. Yeah, usually they would offer that, and then it just doesn't happen. That's all right. All right, and so maybe drilling down a little bit more. So Dave's recommendation, I think that's going to come out in this chapter, is he doesn't really believe in loaning people money. So one way that he has it resolved is just to say it's a gift. Right? It's a gift. Here you go. If you really need the money and you're my friend, here you go. Like, don't even make it a loan. Like, don't even go there. Is what his recommendation usually is. So, all right. Has anybody else got one they want to share? What was your number again? 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Daily, what did you have?
So my brother threw a controller through the wall.
Okay.
He broke
Did it actually go through the wall?
It went through the wall.
Like, not drywall wall.
Yeah.
Wow. A little controller?
Controller.
Wow.
Well,
Okay.
it had already been broken and patched once.
Okay, so there was a
So I had to help him buy a new controller and patch the wall.
Okay.
And then when I lost a pair of my sunglasses, he wouldn't help me.
Ah.
So.
Okay, so it didn't come back your
Yeah.
way, even though you were willing to do that. Okay. So we got all these little fights that can come about. Let's hear another one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Michael.
My sister loves to go out with her friends, and when she needs money, she goes to my parents and first asks if she can go out, first of all, and then they usually say yes, and then they usually say no to the money part because they usually probably don't have any.
Okay.
And that's when she comes to me. She asks me for money, and for the most part, I usually say yes, and I spot her money, and then later on, like if I'm hungry in the house and I don't feel like getting up or going out, I tell her, yo, can you something. She's like, yeah, I got you. And she goes and makes something.
Oh, okay. So it's more of a trade. The money was kind of a gift, or it was expected to be returned, or you were willing to trade it in for.
It was more like
making
she's
a
my
deal?
sister, and then later on, if I need something, like I guess a favor, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
an IOU, maybe, I don't know. I
Okay.
don't really see it like that, but at the end, it was like kind of came out like that.
Yeah. So the bottom line is we just kind of want to be aware that it can make things weird, right? It can add some weirdness, and just to kind of be ready for that. And maybe there's other ways that we can do it. For my son, his buddy's parents were having a garage sale, and so he wanted to sell his PS2 games or something like that. And so he brought him over there, and he left with him, told him what the price was. He came back the next day because he said, hey, I got your game sold. And he said, sweet. And he said, here's $7. And he's like, they were $7 per, or $5 per game. So it was 7 games that he sold for $1 each. And it was supposed to be $35 from his friend. And so that led to a little weirdness with, does he really owe him for it? It was, he was pretty clear on how much they were supposed to be, and his friend just kind of let him go. So having, for my son, you know, we inevitably talk about money and stuff, especially with this class. And so he started kind of carrying an emergency fund, even as a 13-year-old or whatever. Not a huge one, not $500, just basically kind of got the idea of an emergency fund going. Like if you have a screw up like that, it's like, oh, I got you covered, right? I can make up that difference. It was my fault that I sold the games too cheap, and you know, here's $30. I don't want it to be a sore spot for us. So that can do it. All right, what about number 1? I don't want you to write this one down. How well do you communicate with your parents with money? So raise your hands. How many of you feel like you got a pretty open relationship with your parents on money? Okay, most of you. How many of you, and I'm not going to ask how much it is, but how many of you know how much your parents make, their annual income? Okay, so about the same show of hands. So that's usually a good metric for me. Like, we feel like we're open with money, but yet maybe, you know, what kind of details do you know? So how about the spending side of the equation? Do you know how much the house payment is or the rent payment is for your parents? Okay, good. So, you know, having that open relationship, how can that help with your parents in the money, like the way you guys are describing it? How does that help you out? Yeah, Julio?
I think the idea of like giving that money or not, like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it gives you guys a good sense of, you know, the lifestyle that you lead, right? And now you know the income that your parents were earning and the spending that goes on. You know, you're not doing it, you know, with a worksheet or anything, right? You just kind of have at least a little sense of that's what I could be tackling if I want a lifestyle like that. Or maybe I don't need the lifestyle that my parents are doing. I could live on half of that or whatever. It kind of gives you a benchmark. Whereas if you don't really communicate that, and I'm not saying they have to communicate that to you, I just think it's a healthy thing in the relationship to kind of have some of those money talks. Okay, so speaking of money talk, let's go to the case study. So we got Sheri and her parents. Sheri and her parents. Sheri is a junior education major. She's one of the lucky students because her parents pay for her credit card balance every month. In fact, Sheri has a nice car, a cool new cell phone, and plenty of spending money in her wallet, all courtesy of her parents. She has never had to worry about money, plus she doesn't work because her parents told her they wanted her to concentrate on her education instead of a job. However, things took a drastic turn 2 weeks ago when Sheri's dad lost his job. Her parents told her she was being cut off next month because they can't afford to support her. She's frustrated with her parents and the situation. So, how will this turn of events affect Sheri's lifestyle and relationship with her parents? So let's just kind of openly discuss this. How will this turn of events, what do you think's going through Sheri's mind? Don't write this one down. Number one, with the relationship with the parents. What do you kind of sense might be going on there? Let's see, we left off with, was it David? Oh, that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right.
Sheri may not talk to her parents anymore. She has no need to because they don't give her any money.
Okay, if it was kind of that type of relationship, all right, so the talking could be done. Anybody else? What Sheri's gonna do? So you're thinking, we're done. Yes.
She might get a job in help out.
She might get a job in what?
Help out pay.
Oh, and help out pay. Okay, so yeah, just the kind of the opposite. How can I help out? How can I pitch in? Or I'm gonna need to do that. So I do want you to answer number 2. Does Sheri have a right to be upset with her parents? Okay, so I want to do a little poll first, because I can see this one going either way, the way these case studies go. How many people think she does have a right to be upset with her parents? Well, look at show hands high, because this is kind of usually can go either way. 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many people say no, she doesn't have the right to be right with her parents? Okay, so the people who say she doesn't have a right. So let me start with the doesn't have a right people. Why don't you think she has a right to be mad at her parents, upset with her parents? Go ahead, Taylor.
One, she sounds very ungrateful.
Okay.
Yeah, she just sounds like a little spoiled brat.
Okay.
And I feel like, okay, great, her parents have supported her, that's so good for her, but why is she not learning these positive money habits way before it's time to get cut off? Now that she's getting cut off, and it's like, I understand why she would be upset, but she should have prepared better.
Okay. Want to shift a little bit towards her. Now let me go to the, she's got a right to be upset with her parents. So there's 4 of you. Which one wants to go? Give me one of you 4. What do you think? Who was it? Daly, Hannah, who else over here? Michael. Do I have to do the random number generator, or when do you want to volunteer? All right, Daly, what do you got?
Because I think her parents also didn't really explain how to help her, so she kind of just went with it and then assumed there would be a problem in the end.
Okay.
So like now at this point, since she is cut off, she kind of has to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
Which will help in the end.
Yeah, so, this one's kind of a little bit weird. So I understand where Taylor's coming from, but at the same time, when you're a kid and life just works that way, the way Sheri's parents did it, you kind of get used to that is the way life is, right? So does she have kind of a claim against them in a sense of, well, where was your parenting? Why didn't you, I guess to push back a little bit against Taylor, like, why didn't you teach me to manage my money? I'm just a kid. I'm 9 years old. I don't know this stuff, right? And so, it's a tough one depending, obviously she's in college now, so I think as you start to get older and older, eventually you need to figure this stuff out on your own, that maybe this isn't a sustainable thing that'll last forever. So I think that can go either way. So what would she, how could parents have done something different? How could things be structured so that, Sheri wasn't mad or something? I'm trying to think about a different way, growing up, maybe parenting type of thing. Hannah? Okay, yeah, we can go hardcore right to our stuff, right? With budgeting and every dollar has a name type of stuff, Brady?
They can still buy stuff with the part where it says, like, you don't need a job, focus on your education.
Yeah, okay. So something like that, Samad?
I would say, like, have a
Yeah. So we talked about like the worksheets last time. We talked about that, like having something to do that earns a pay so that you work, you get paid, you don't work, you get paid, something along those lines. And there's probably a blending of those things because not everything they do, as we saw in the last video, there's some stuff you just do because you're my kid and you're part of this family, and then there's other things that might have a payment associated with it, right? So apparently there was nothing of that pay-as-you-go stuff here. So blending in some of that stuff might have been important. So another thing that might have been nice for Sheri, and maybe something you guys can do if you're in this situation. So her parents kind of did the spend what you want, we'll pay off your balance type of thing. How could that part of this equation be done differently that would have maybe some learning associated with it for Sheri. Look at that part. See, give her a set of money each month. Yeah. So, and it can be high. So what I've done, if any of you are in this situation, so let's just say that on average, you know, your parents say, okay, well, don't go crazy, but I'll pay off the balance each month. And so you look at your balance and it happened to be, let's just say, pick out a number out of the air, $200 a month or something. And so on average, sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. You can go back to them and kind of play what we call good cop, bad cop, right? So I'm going to be the bad cop, and you can say, Mom and Dad, I'm in personal finance right now, and we've been doing this payoff thing, but what I think would be better is if instead of you paying, it seems to be approximately in this range, and then this is where you can kind of take advantage of your parents a little bit. So let's say it averaged to be, between 150 and 250 or something, and so on average it was really around 200. You go and say, how about you just give me 225 per month? And what this does then, let me ask you, if you get a fixed 225 per month as opposed to whatever you spend, mother may I, we'll pay off the balance and you might get scolded if you spend too much. If you get a fixed 225, what does that change for Sheri on a month-to-month basis? With a fixed 225, how does that change how she looks at this gift, if you will? The amount she spends, because if she doesn't spend it all, what can she do? Save it. That's not with the other system, right? There's no saving, it's just all spending. Whatever you spend is okay, but now Sheri says, oh, I want to save up for this new computer program that I need for my graphic design class, and it's $600 or something. Now she could actually take the 225, spend 100 of it, and start saving up 125 or whatever, right? So we've kind of flipped the equation by having some sort of savings component that you can keep adding on, and it kind of makes you think about your decisions because all you have is 225. And then we're back to, as Sienna was saying, or I can't remember which one of you two, but the every dollar has a name. Was that you? Yeah, so every dollar has a name. And we're budgeting our 225 and thinking about if I spend it on this, I can't spend it on this, right? The whole idea of opportunity cost. So that might be a little technique if you guys have a situation where you're fortunate enough to have something like that. Maybe you can try to change the framing of it a little bit. Okay, so let's go into our next section here. And actually, before we do that, I was just going to bring up the two exercises. So Raven asked earlier about it, and I couldn't remember the exact directions. But another thing you can do with this is it doesn't have to be your parent. It just says prefer to be. What the heck happened here? Ah! Blew it up too much. Let's try that again. Preview. There it is. So it just says interview someone from a previous generation, preferably your parent. It is called interview a parent. I still don't care if you want to modify some of the questions, or you can think about, like some of this last video talked about, was there a significant other or a mom or a friend that was kind of your, how did you deal with stuff if you had somebody else in your life that you talked about with money things, or you can find a grandma, grandpa, or whatever. Okay, so that's the interview. And then the other one is the radio case call, which we haven't had one of these yet. So the directions are going to point you to the Foundation's You page and listen to a radio call. So I wanted to show you what that is. So on the Foundation's You page, this is where our little toolbox is of different financial stuff. Down at the bottom, there's this thing called calls. And if you click that, it'll bring you to some stuff. We'll do this in the insurance chapter as well. But you just have to pick. So one of these little icon says relationships. And so we have lovingly say no, repaid the money, but the relationship's suffering, convince him he needs help. Co-signing equals stupid tax. That's a good one. Preserving the friendship. And then okay for girlfriend and I to buy a house. So just to give you an idea, you just start pressing play.
Starting this segment off is Jim. Hey, Jim, welcome to the
You
Dave
can also
Ramsey
blow
Show.
up the short
Hey,
summary.
what's up, man?
That'll make it, sir. How can I help?
Me and my girlfriend, we just recently moved to Nashville a year ago because of our job. And I had 2 credit cards. I paid one off. I kind of kept one. Should I just pay that off before I go get a mortgage?
Yes.
And
Close the account.
Okay, I mean, because I was like looking at showing just regular payment, you know, that like I'm starting to pay bills and stuff like that.
And you have bad credit?
Yeah, that's the reason I was using the card.
Well, it might.
All right, I'm just gonna pause it there, but that's what you're doing. Just listen to the radio thing and then do a response on it. Any questions there? All right. Let's do the next one. Okay, so let's do a little giving talk here. So I want you to answer number 2. Are you currently giving of your time, money, or talents? If so, describe an impactful experience that you've had. All right, look for a volunteer. Impactful experience you had? Raven?
So I used to help out at ELC, Elizabeth Lincoln Center.
Okay, yeah. So Elizabeth Layton Center is a place here on the outside of town. They do counseling and women who are in trouble and all kinds of different stuff, right?
And so they have like grade school group therapy of like little elementary school kids. And I would like help and like make meals with them and stuff. And I always thought it was fun and neat because, you know, some of them didn't even know they're gonna go home and have dinner. But they always like share the food with me. They're offered to.
Yeah. I see what you mean. That touched you on them wanting to share back.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to share one I had. I went to the city of Ottawa to dispute or clean up a utility bill that I had. I can't remember the details, but I was sitting there at the little cubicle with the glass, and she was looking at my account, and this lady came up that she looked like she was maybe early 60s or so, and she started talking, having her conversation at the window, and so I was like this far apart, so I kind of overheard what was going on, and she's like, I don't know what happened with my payment, and then the person behind the desk said, well, I'm sorry, ma'am, if you can come in by tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock with the rest of the balance, it's $51.65, then, you know, we won't shut off your electricity. And she starts sobbing. I mean, just sobbing. Like, I did everything I could, you know, I didn't know this was that, and then you can see that this was a big deal. And so while she was having that conversation, I reached into my wallet and I happened to have one of these here and a couple more. And towards the end of the conversation, when they had it, I just kind of did this and put it underneath the window. And she was so thankful and was crying again. And that really touched me. I was so happy that I happened to be in that position at that time to help her out. And so that was a cool thing to be able to do. And if I, you know, wasn't carrying cash around or whatever, doing things the way I did it, it would have been kind of hard, like, oh, let me Venmo you or write you a check or whatever, right? So it's kind of cool to just be able to pull that out and slide it into the window and cover your bill. So anybody else have an impactful experience? One more maybe. Come on, I know you're dying to do it. Somebody out there is Daily.
So my family and I grew up all at Walmart, and this guy in front of us was like buying diapers and like stuff for a bathroom.
Uh-huh.
He couldn't afford it, so he had to leave it all. So my family and I like, bought it and we ran it out to him. And
Cool.
he started crying and he gave him a hug.
Yeah, yeah.
It was really nice to see that.
Yeah, those things are kind of what it's all about in the grand scheme of things, being able to put yourself in that position. So, good. Let's see. So let's go ahead and just do this Reggie case. So we've got Reggie and giving. So Reggie is a sophomore and recently did a research paper on poverty in the United States. Writing the paper made him realize that no matter how difficult life is for him, there are always others suffering more. He feels strongly about doing something to make a difference in the area of domestic poverty. The bad news is that he's not sure what he can do since he has no savings and is only in his second year at college. So what are some things Reggie could do to make a difference for those in poverty? How much money does Reggie need in order to help those people who are living in poverty? And what are some ideas about how Reggie can start saving money for himself so that he's able to give when the time comes? So kind of think about those three things. You can just put one answer that kind of summarizes, kind of blends those together. You don't have to go 1, 2, 3, but just kind of think about those questions. Reggie, the college student. Okay, so what'd you come up with? For Reggie, does he need money? You got to start saving. No. So what are some things college students might be able to do, or Reggie could maybe do? Help out with soup kitchen. So usually some places there's stuff like that. What else? And a lot of different ways once you start thinking. Jerice. What's that? Oh, sell some stuff. Okay, if he wanted to raise some money to give. Now, if he's kind of the normal college student, which, let's see, I can't remember this one. He's a sophomore. He doesn't necessarily say whether he's got, a ton of money or not. But if he had that, if he was the normal college student without a lot of money, I don't think I'd advise him to sell something to do that, especially if he's taking on student loan debt, right? So that would be kind of against our game plan in terms of maybe step number 1.
Oh,
They got to throw that at you, right? Emergency fund, how big? 1,000 or 500 less than 20. So if Reggie's doesn't have a $500 emergency fund, assuming he's making less than 20,000, should he be selling stuff to give to people? Not according to this plan. Why? Let me go to Michael first. I don't know if you want to answer the why question or not.
I was going to say that you don't always need, I said that he doesn't always have to contribute by giving money. He can contribute by giving his time and energy to help out.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that, I think it would be, if he feels like he wants to give, he's called to give, whatever, I think that is going to be his best answer. As his financial consultant, if I was his financial consultant, following our game plan again, if he's got debt, should he sell what he's got to help the poor and give them money? Not if he's got debt. So why are we being so selfish here? We're going to have $500 for ourselves as an emergency fund, and we're going to make sure that we're debt free. If we're not debt free, then we're not selling something to give. Now, by the way, does that mean you're not giving anything out of your income? No, it doesn't. You still have a place for giving. My mom, one time when we were kind of struggling with cash flow financially, my mom gave me some advice and said, just give $5. This was to church. I think it was referencing or whatever as far as giving. And I always thought that was really good advice from my mom. So from your income, you can still plan to give $5, you spend that at Starbucks or on a hamburger or whatever, right? So even if you're scraping by, not if you're really gazelle intense trying to do it, but if you've got $5 or put something out there, even if it was $1 or $2, why would that be important? Even though in the grand scheme of things, it's relatively insignificant for the people that you're helping. Why is it maybe significant for you? You're still getting something out. You're still having something as a placeholder in your budget, right? Every dollar has a name. One of those names can be giving, even if it's really small because you're struggling or something, right? But you kind of get in the habit. Have you ever heard of making good habits for yourself? And sometimes you just have to get into the rhythm of doing it. And then as things get better, you can just bump that up a little bit incrementally as your income grows or life circumstances change. But from a habit forming standpoint, it's a good way to be. So locally here, have any of you heard of Ripples of Change here in Ottawa? So this is a group that I've been a part of for probably 7 years now, at least, I bet. So it started where I did a research project on poverty, and it turned out I was looking at places that give a hand out versus a hand up. Have you heard that terminology? A hand out versus a hand up. So do we give people money, give a man to fish, or give a man a fish, teach a man to fish? That concept, you've heard that little saying before. So what I found when I studied Ottawa and some of the other communities where we did this research project is there wasn't a lot of places that were teaching a man to fish. It was mostly giving fish, whether that was, we surveyed all of the civic organizations, churches, so it went beyond religion, is what I'm trying to say. And so, but this one group was in its infancy at the time. And what they did is they met with people and tried to educate them on their skills and create a social network, because birds of a feather tend to flock together. If you're poor, what kind of friends do you generally have? Poor friends. If you're rich, you have rich friends, right? And so what Ripples of Change tried to do is bring together people who wanted to give their time and talents, not the money, not that they didn't give money in other places, but this particular organization focused on creating those social networks. And I'm very proud to say that 3 of the single moms that I started working with 7 years ago own their own house now. And they were right at poverty level of income. Some of them had a little windfall come in from a death in the family, and some of them had other circumstances. But even being at poverty level, through budgeting, zero-based budget, all that stuff, they were able, they did, and I'm not taking any of the credit. They worked their tails off. They're the ones who had to implement. I just talked to them every once in a while and gave them some tips on the budgeting stuff, and they really took it to themselves, and they're got their own house now. They were able to get into a house. So, all right, we'll see you tomorrow.